Okay, what you're about to watch is the most value-packed video on real estate investing that I've personally ever seen. I'm going to pull back the curtain on exactly how I turned $10,000 into $660,000 of liquid cash through 10 real-life deals that I've closed in the last year. And I'm just going to pull back the curtain. I'm not a guru, I'm a real operator, and I'm going to show you behind the scenes of my business and exactly what I did to get each one of these deals, the marketing behind it, the contracts, the closing statements, the contractor bids, pictures, all the numbers. I'm opening it all up, and your favorite gurus are going to be crying themselves to sleep for the next year because I've never seen anyone go into this level of detail on real deals that are working on today's market. So buckle in, let's get into it. Okay, so I've spent like the last 6 weeks putting this entire board together that literally goes through, these are the 10 deals with addresses and all the information. But not only that, I literally go step by step, literally everything from like text messages and conversations with sellers, where you pull the data, contracts to use, how to get contractors. Like it's all spelled out in here, A through Z. And you see the bankroll progression starting from $10,000. And as we go through all these deals, 101K, 193, 243, 452, 500,000, 574,000, 596, 668 is a finishing cash that you're sitting on by the end of doing these exact 10 deals. So the idea is that you could copy this exact business model and this exact framework. And if you copy this step by step, you could achieve similar results to what I did turning 10 grand into 670,000. So this video is extremely important for anyone wanting to multiply their capital using real estate and leveraging this business. There's so much information out there, but if you just literally save this video and copy exactly what I do, this could be the most important video that you ever see. So right now it's March 2026. I did in February 181,000 personal profit, which honestly for me that was just 2 deals. It's kind of a low volume month. So you could see in one account I had 40,000, another one I had 141K. So that's that. I usually have more sales than this on any given month, but I'm just recording this video in March and giving you the real numbers from last month. So sometimes, being that it's real estate, sales could be a little bit spread out. I have a bunch of other accounts and more investment vehicles. I have a fund, etc., that I'm not counting. This is just 2 of my flipping accounts. But this was really just through 2 properties that I did 180K profit. This was one house that was a rehab that I did like 110K or so on. And then this was one that I just flipped as is and did about 40K on. So here's a few more screenshots of recent like 100K plus profits. You could see that. That's like regular. And then here's a couple other just snippets of random months where, cash collected at profits 412K, 250, 280, 230. So this is like consistent, and I've been doing these numbers for 10 years. At the same time as I'm doing those, like the fix and flipping and operating that business is just one part of the many things that I do. This is a multifamily project that I bought and sold. This was a loan that I funded in the same time in my private lending business. So while I'm doing these flips, it's just to illustrate that I'm doing other things as well. And, accomplishing the numbers that I'm outlining here is actually really not that difficult. So as you can see, I'm not like a super serious buttoned up dude. I just do this and have been doing it for a long time and have very specialized knowledge and experience in this business. So I'm going to go over every framework and every process that I use to do these 10 deals. And I'm kind of just going to take it one deal at a time, and it branches off into all the specific actions that you need to take to copy this. So this is very important, and that you just follow along and pay attention as I go through every single property. But before I get into it super deep, I just want to touch on again, like I've been doing this for 12 years was my first deal. And I've been doing 7 figures a year for the last 9 years or so. So this year I'm going to do multiple 7 figures of profit at 29 with full freedom, no office, no like crazy responsibilities outside of running this business. And before I get into like the nitty gritty and the details behind every single one of these deals, I'm just going to kind of prove up a little bit as to why I think that I'm a credible source and why you could feel confident in to listening what I'm saying here in this video. So I'm not trying to flex, just kind of proving that, I know what I'm talking about. At 29, I've acquired nearly 500 properties at over $70 million worth of real estate. I've not had a boss since I was 17. I get to do basically what I want when I want. I decide when I want to wake up. I decide when and where to get lunch and take as long as I want. I don't have to beg my boss for a lunch break. If I decide I want to go to Four Seasons in Hawaii for a month tomorrow, I can do that. I could help my family whenever they need it. I bought my mom a farm in the countryside in Poland to retire and live with all her dogs and horses and farm animals and do whatever she wants there. Help pay for veterinary care for her horses and whatever. I pay for everything for my grandma to travel internationally and come spend weeks at a time traveling around national parks or whatever she wants to do with her grandkids. I daily drive a Maybach SUV. With my early success that I had in real estate, I bought an obnoxious purple Bentley for cash that I got to parade around Colorado. I've had a multitude of dream places that I've lived at and cars since then. I've lived wherever I wanted to in Colorado and then Santa Monica and in California in my 20s. So just had to been able to basically do what I want, and countless legendary trips and experiences and all that kind of stuff over the last 10 years, basically all because of real estate. Pretty shallow, but some of it materialistic, whatever kind of stuff, but still just kind of to instill the point that, I've been successful in this business and that what I'm saying is credible. So really, I think this video is going to show you how to build your own money printer if you're either an operator, so you have some capital and credit that you want to multiply through real estate, or you're an investor where you already have substantial capital and have investments, but you want to scale that and or diversify through real estate. So let me open this up real quick. Obviously, I offer mentorship to certain individuals that I see long-term potential in working with. And I have a ton of free content like this video and many others that I've dropped and I'm going to continue to drop on my YouTube. Those videos, I teach people exactly what I'm going to teach in this video, just way more in depth. And that's broken down into 5 simple steps. That's how to nail down your strategy and build a buy box, how to build a free inbound deal flow machine. So these kind of deals like the ones that I'm showing you just come to you naturally and you're able to get opportunities that aren't available to the general public. I show you how to analyze and stress test deals like a pro. Show you how to get up to 100% financing for your deals through hard money and through private lenders, and how to pick finishes and run your jobs tight to get the max profits in the shortest amount of time possible. So your options, like in leveraging this business and this information and doing this on your own and kind of, building the same thing that I've been able to build, is you could learn through my free videos. You could learn on the internet, and that's great. That's option A, but you're still using trial and error in that case. And in real estate, part of trial and error is very expensive. So regardless, I try to put out the best, most comprehensive content to help people get started. So you could take that, run with it, figure it out on your own, and overcome the obstacles at each level of your journey over the next 3 or 5 or 10 years. And as you continue to grow, and just, again, do it on your own, learn through trial and error, make those mistakes. And, whether it takes a week to figure out the unlock for that next level, or it takes 2 years, you keep on working at it and eventually figure it out. That's option A. Or option B is you partner with me to basically borrow my 12 years of experience. You get 100% funding from me. You just find the deals in your market and you run the construction. And I look over your shoulder to avoid the expensive landmines and expensive mistakes and help cut years off of your learning curve. And then we continue to work together as you scale, and I continue to provide funding for your deals. And then we can continue to joint venture on bigger and better deals. And then option like C, kind of the fine print here, if you have 300,000 plus of liquid cash already, you can just invest in funds and let other operators, that have all the experience already, do all the work while your cash just compounds, and focus on deals that have bigger 6 and 7 figure profit potential. So this video could still serve as a good educational tool for you, but this is more so intended for the people that are in that operator stage and are looking to multiply capital. So again, your options are either A, basically figure it out on your own, or option B, partner with me, borrow my experience, and scale infinitely faster. So the answer there is pretty obvious. I personally ran option A for 10 years myself, and I learned everything through trial and error and no mentors, no partners, and I was able to become successful through massive action and just determination and perseverance on that path. But that path also cost me millions of dollars in real losses on bad deals and many seasons of enormous stress that I don't think most people would realistically want to go through. So I'm teaching you everything I know. I'm doing most of it for free for select people that want to partner with me. I do offer a mentorship, but in any case, I know how to help you avoid the same painful and expensive mistakes and lessons that I had to learn the hard way. And so naturally, through putting all this content out there, I hope that some of you get value from the content and take action. And I want to form long-term relationships and partnerships with those people to help me conquer new markets and scale together well beyond what we could accomplish alone. So that's kind of your two options in going down this real estate journey. So like I said, I've spent the last 6 weeks creating this specific video and putting this whole board together. And I'm putting it out for free because when this video takes you through your first $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 profit flip, my hope is that you'll come back to me to help you get past $500,000 in profit and cash. So I genuinely believe that this is the best way to multiply your capital and make insane progress quickly in real estate. So a quick breakdown of who I am and what I do so that you know, again, that I'm qualified to be making this video. The simplified Cliff's Notes on that is that I run a private equity shop that invests in real estate projects and also backs ambitious operators to help them build their foundation through my proven models, and then we can scale together. So for myself to get to 100 million, I specifically want to partner with individuals and operators that can scale this model on their own for up to $10 million plus of deals. And I support you along that journey. And really all I have to do there is give you these systems and give you the capital and then that support so you can implement these systems, close deals, and multiply your own capital to 500,000 plus, and then we can scale together. So you can stop there and keep repeating and just keep doing the same model on your own, run as an operator and keep flipping and, go into other verticals independently. Or we joint venture at that point. We tackle bigger deals together and just take over your market and beyond, to eventually achieve a total 1 billion plus of assets and go up against the old guard of institutional real estate private equity shops. So again, like going back to a quick breakdown of who I am and what I do, this is a little bit of my background. So I bought my first property when I was 17. It was a piece of land for $800. I was just literally came across real estate on YouTube. I didn't have any family in the business. I didn't have any connections. I didn't have a rich uncle that was funding my deals. I literally learned just like you're learning right now by finding people on the internet and learning about this. I bought a little course here and there and then just learned through trial and error over the last 12 years. But that first purchase was $800. Second purchase was $7,500. Then I did some wholesaling and really learned the ropes and then started flipping. And since then have done, Airbnb, Section 8, multifamily, kind of, everything that you read about. I've tried and done it all. Some of it I've scaled up, some of it I've scaled down, but I've really been learning this through trial by fire, if you will. Getting out there and trying stuff and scaling it up and, adjusting as I go. So really learned this stuff much like you. That was back in 2014 that I bought that. Here's some of my car titles and stuff for my cheap cars that I used to flip. I bought this piece of land in 2014. This is me looking like a cornball when I signed up for Bigger Pockets. Here's me flexing my deed on my $1,000 piece of land and some more card titles and stuff. So that was like the start of my real estate journey about 12 years ago. And then when I kind of got onto something that was working, I scaled that up aggressively and made my first million in 2018. So kind of went all out at that point. This is my first office in Florida. This was my first office in Colorado. This was an office that I opened in California. So I was just hitting the ground running with what was working. And a lot of it is very similar to these frameworks that I'm showing you today, and was able to achieve some pretty significant success with that. This is from an interview that I did a long time ago, 2019, that got a bunch of views just talking about, some of the same stuff that I'm talking about today. So since then, I've done nearly $100 million worth of deals in 12 different states. I've been like a top operator in this niche throughout my 20s. Now I've done multifamily, commercial, private lending, Section 8. I've kind of done it all. And I've also helped countless people get into real estate and, make their own success stories. So this was Fuad that I actually met through, he DM'd me on Instagram. And a year later, after he got into real estate, he bought his dream car, this Aston Martin. This was Paul, that he met me through a mutual friend. He drives a Ferrari now and buys $200,000 watches and is nearing $100 million worth of deals on his own. This is my brother, Bert. He didn't even finish high school, and he makes $1 million a year as an operator in his early 20s. So obviously what I'm talking about is real. There's people out in the real world that are using these same frameworks and putting their own spin on it and absolutely killing it as, real estate investors and operators in their own right. So yeah, this entire business model that me and these people use to achieve success in real estate is broken down A through Z through these 10 real life examples in this video that you're watching right now. And that's broken down through how I flipped $10,000 into $660,000 in these 10 deals, and then the specific frameworks and actions that went into every process behind each one of these deals. So quick overview is going to be, so yeah, the link for this specific Miro board for this whole thing that you see here is in the description of this video. So you can go and open this and go through it on your own as well. And this is all like information that I'm recording right now. This isn't recycled old videos. This isn't like AI stuff. This is real, stuff that's working in practice that I'm distilling down into this board and into this video. So I go through, again, every deal A through Z, how I found it, how I funded it, the construction, the strategies, and the numbers. These are 10 real life deals that I did in the last year that if you copied exactly, you would have started with 10 grand that you invested in the first deal and end with 668,000 in cash by the 10th deal. So I break down every strategy, every tool, every resource, and every contract that I used, and every minute of this video is just packed with value. So let's get into it. So the first deal, the Lucky Leap, your first deal in real estate, and it's a beauty. So the purchase price here was $105,000. The total cash to get in at the purchase was only $3,905 because I was able to secure a great private loan for this. So I'll show you how to do that. The rehab was $4,086 and the interest was $2,100. So that's where your total cash out of pocket is like 10 grand, and then sold for $180, resulting in a $46,000 profit. So this was the condo building. This was in Oak Lawn. It's a suburb of Chicago. The address is in this thing here, so you can see all the addresses of every property. Google this, pull up the pictures on your own. 5700 Circle Drive. So the play-by-play on how this went down is the source was a text blast to a tax delinquent list, and it was a cash offer. Basically, this seller bought the property for a good price a few years ago. He renovated it fully for his mother to live in it. They ended up no longer wanting to live there. They were moving out, and he just didn't pay the taxes or the HOA dues for the whole time they were there. So he would have had to So he would have had to come up with about 40 grand if he wanted to keep it. So right away on our first conversation, he shared that if he can get 100 grand for the thing, he'd be happy with it. We both agreed that it's probably worth 170, 180. I wasn't trying to trick him or do anything sleazy or manipulate him into like giving it to me for a discount. We both knew that it was a discount, and he saw the value in the cash offer, and was okay, with giving somewhat of a discount in order for the convenience that comes with selling to an investor. So these deals are out there, and they're everywhere nationwide. So we ended up meeting. The property did need some touch ups, but he did a really nice rehab on it. So we agreed to 105 so he can net the 100 that he wanted. And I won't hide the fact that there's a little bit of luck here to getting an already rehabbed house for such a discount, but those deals are out there. If you follow these processes, I've done tons of deals just like this, so they're certainly out there. I just quickly painted the house, replaced the closet door and a broken window, got it back up on the market in a couple weeks, and ultimately got it sold for 180. So if you want to see in detail exactly how to pull tax delinquent lists and how to skip trace the data and reach out to them, you can see that in this video at the link here. But basically, I just pulled the tax delinquent list, skip traced it, and sent out text to everyone on it. He responded that he is interested and just set up an appointment right away. And then after getting the agreement with him and making a deal at his $105,000 total price, I connected with a private lender and got a loan for the full 105,000. And just because I very clearly communicated just how much equity there is, so the lender was comfortable funding 105K. So you could see there was comps from 180 to 190, and the finishes on this unit were even better than those. So, copy this as a reference and how you could talk to private lenders and explain to them the value in your deal. And, you can get 100% financing like this. I have a quick note here on like national lenders that you could use, how you could use Google Maps to find local hard money lenders. And then really what I recommend doing is diving into the chain of title. Just look up the comps and find rehab properties that have sold all over your city. And if you research enough of those and look at the lenders that provided the loans on those, it has the lender's info right there in the records. On the mortgage or the deed of trust document, it says who it was prepared by. So you can just call those people that are preparing those loans and call them and say, hey, I'm an investor. I have a deal that is worth 190 and I have it for 105 and I'm looking for 100% financing. Would you want to take a look at it? And then the ones that say yes, you send them an email like this, and bada bing, bada boom, we got this lender to agree to fund 100% of the purchase. In exchange, they took 2 points, which was 2,100, and 12% interest, which I had to pay in monthly interest-only payments of $1,050. So that's where the lead came from, how I got it funded. All relatively simple. Yes, it does require some work, but it's not rocket science. So at this stage, when he agreed to meet and we went out to the property, we were able to get a purchase agreement signed right away. This is just a standard Illinois Board of Realtors real estate contract. Just Google, California real estate contract or, Minnesota real estate contract, whatever, PDF, and you'll be able to find that template for your own market. These are always good to use because it's like more credible. It's not like a one-page contract, wholesaler contract. This is like, the real contract for your state. So I recommend using something like this. So got that signed and sent this completed contract along with the terms of the loan for our private lender to the title company. And they set up the closing. And at closing, it was $105,000 purchase price. The loan was $105,000. Here's the points that got paid at closing, like I mentioned earlier, to the lender. Random costs and stuff like any other closing. And as you can see here, it was only $3,900 due from the borrower, which was me in this case. in order to complete the purchase. So with all the closing costs, the title fees, and the loan fees, the total purchase price with all the costs and everything ended up being $113, and I only had to send in $3,904.69 in order to own this wonderful property. So just copying what I said 2 minutes ago about how to get private lenders to fund your deals, you could also buy properties for $180K with only a few $1,000s down if you find a good deal like this. So after the closing, sent in the money, signed the docs, and now we could get to work. So like I mentioned, this seller had already renovated the property, but it still was a little rough around the edges. They had lived there for a while, so it needed some paint touch-ups, and this like closet door was broken, a couple other little things, but the extent of it was pretty much paint, cleanup, closet door, and a cracked window. So I'll shoot off here for a quick second just to talk about how to source contractors and how to vet contractors. A deal like this is great for your first one because, bigger rehabs can get more complicated. And we do go into that a little bit later in the 10 deals here. We do some bigger rehabs. But if you can start with a lighter rehab like this up front, that takes a lot of the risk away and lets you get your reps in with contractor sourcing and vetting. But here I just touch on how you can find contractors. It's a lot of simple ways. Whether you're hitting up the city where your property's at, they usually have a list of licensed contractors. You can ask realtors that have sold rehabbed properties for contractor referrals. You can use Facebook groups and Facebook Marketplace. And then also just driving around whenever you see construction vans and stuff, take a picture of it, add it to your database, or just stop the contractor and talk to them, get their number, and just build kind of a database, save them in your phone contacts, put contractor as a tag, and kind of stack up a big Rolodex of contractors over time. Then when you have a project, you have them come out and whoever you're adding, you want to visit any of their active sites. You want to look at their previously completed projects, check their references, and usually you want to get 3 bids on anything that you have a contractor do. So in this example, this dude was off of Facebook Marketplace. He painted the house, $2,000 for labor. This was the materials, just really paint and a door. And then there was one other guy that got recommended by a realtor that fixed that cracked window and did a couple other little odds and ends. Total rehab, $4,086.33. So $4,000 into construction, and it looked like this. So that's where I say I got a little bit lucky on this first one because it really was nicely rehabbed already, and I only needed to paint it. There's very little construction risk or rehab budget that had to go into it, and it looked great. So that's where the luck was in this one, but again, totally possible. And as far as doing bigger, more involved rehabs, we'll get into that on some of the other deals in the series. So this realtor was one that I actually found through that private lender process above. This realtor had sold a lot of rehabbed properties in the area, so just had her go ahead and list and sell this property as well since she's active in that market. Listed it for $179.9 and got $180. Here you could see the purchase at $105 and the $180 in the records. So I priced towards the higher end of the comps a little bit because the finishes were nicer than anything else that had sold in the area. I did have to take it on and off the market a couple of times, which a good realtor will also suggest when and where to do this and help you with your pricing. But in this case, we knew we were priced right. It just took a couple of cancel and realists and got a full asking price offer, or $100 over asking price, and ultimately closed on that $180K offer 30 days later. So then here's the closing statement for the resale. So you could see it was $180, backed out some tax expirations, then also had to pay the real estate commissions here, pay off on that loan we got, which was $105, and then this was coming up on another month or so of interest. And at the end of the day, got $56,000 back when the property was sold. So cash collected at closing was $56,417 and 81 cents. The total cost with that $3,900 cash to close, the $4,000 rehab, and the interest payments that had to be paid out of pocket, it was about 10 grand. So total profit on the deal was just over 46,000, but new bankroll now from that first 10K is 56,000 after selling this property. Because we put about 10 in, we got 56 back. So the keys to this deal were the problem that the seller was facing was that he had some big bills due against the property and he just didn't need it anymore. He was moving out of there and he didn't want to, go on the market, make these repairs, have to pay that 40 grand that was outstanding. He just wanted the convenience of selling to an investor, and those deals are everywhere. You just have to know where to look. The strategy was that he had very reasonable expectations, just kind of met him where he was at, didn't try to squeeze him, didn't try to, milk the heck out of the deal. We both agreed that it was reasonable what he was asking for, and we're able to get him what he wants, and we got what we want, which is a beautiful discount on a good property. So this no flip resulted in turning 10 grand into over 50 grand in just about 3 months with virtually no construction and bankroll at $56,000 after this very first flip. So at this point, we're feeling pretty good. $10,000 that we put out, whether you do that cash or throw some of the materials on a credit card or whatever it might be, it is a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it's not. And you just basically 6x your money in 3 months on one deal. Now, you can't tell me that if you close one of those, you're not going to be absolutely gassed and just looking for the next one. So that's where this one comes in. So for the second deal in the series, I call it Mentor's Edge, and that's because I provide some really cool docs in here and templates that you could use to get creative deals, and that's exactly what this was. Bought this deal with $1,000 out of pocket by taking over the seller's existing mortgage, and this was also one that didn't really need much rehab. So let's get into it. This was in Chicago, came through a text blast to a pre-foreclosure list, and it was a creative financing offer. So the seller had minimal equity because he bought it already rehabbed a couple years prior to me getting involved here. So it worked because the property appreciated over the few years that he owned it. But if we had to pay cash for this and buy it for his balance, pay it all off, it probably wouldn't have really been worth the risk. But because we were able to structure creatively and had the skills and the templates and the documents and the knowledge to make that happen, it made this a no-brainer because the seller had already moved out. He knew the house needed a little bit of work and cleanup and he had already lived there a couple years. So given the situation, I proposed $1,000 cash, walk away money, and that way he avoids foreclosure, gets still a couple bucks, and we get a good deal. So he agreed. Did that minor cosmetic rehab, got it back up to 100%, got it back on the market, and locked in a $36,000 net profit. So as you can see, this came in through a text. It was just like, hey, would you schedule a call to entertain a proposal for your property? He said, yes, I'm free to discuss. This was the payoff when we sold it. So 189.5 balance plus the $1,000 cash we gave him up front was about 190,566 as the total purchase price. And so here are the documents. I have these in a template link right here, so you can go and get all these for free. Basically, it's a third-party authorization, so you could speak to the bank and order payoff statements, do whatever you need to do without your name being on the loan. Quitclaim deed, this is the most important document. That's what conveys the ownership from him to me without transferring the mortgage. So that's why it's called subject to. It's subject to the existing financing. This is a limited power of attorney, just taking this in case it's needed. Didn't have to use it, but in case you need to do anything else with the loan on behalf of the seller. And then this is just like an internal doc I kind of crafted that just clearly communicates the financial situation around the deal. So here was just his information and the $1,000 going to him. So after he executed these docs, we just send them to the title company. They record the quitclaim, and we become the legal owner without having to pay off that mortgage balance initially. So after that's done, now we get to work. So to buy this deal, there was not even a closing statement or anything. It was just $1,000 cash to the guy, and then title recorded the quitclaim. So I don't have any before pictures on this, but I'll show you guys. This was all already done. He bought the house rehabbed. So it looked just like this, but just imagine 5 years worth of clutter and garbage in here, and he hadn't cleaned the house even once, it looked like. So that's how it looked before. But it's pretty much the same thing. Like all the stuff was already here. So the extent of the rehab was pretty much like painting the whole house, deep cleaning. There was a little bit of minor other repairs that needed to be done. So this quote was $49.50 labor only, and there was a little bit of other stuff outside of that, but it was really minimal. The house was again already rehabbed. So as you can see, first and second deals, neither of them needed significant rehab. And that's how I would recommend starting if you can, just to get them done quick and get that experience under your belt dealing with painters and clean out people and whatever before you start rebuilding a whole house from the ground up. So if you remember, purchase was around $190, very minor rehab, listed and sold for $265. So this was price pretty aggressive. There was comps at like $275 plus, but just listed this at $265. Took about 2 weeks, got under contract at full price, and then about 30 days later closed at $265. So you could see here $265 sale price, whatever costs and expenses, and then this was that payoff to the bank. So this was the old seller's existing mortgage that stayed in place. It was in foreclosure. We didn't make any payments, didn't do anything as far as that's concerned. Just paid everything off at closing for $189,600, and that resulted in $45,000 coming back to me when I sold this. So collected $45,800 between that rehab quote that I showed you guys, plus some materials and some other odds and ends. The furnace needed to get fixed, and the cash out to the guy of $1,000 that totaled $9,700. So we collected $45,800, put out $9,700, total profit $36,117. So the problem here was the seller had low equity and was facing foreclosure. No one probably really would have bought that deal and cashed him out $190,000 cash with the ARV only being $265. Just a little bit too tight. But knowing how to structure the creative deal, we were able to mitigate risk and cash exposure and only have $1,000 in the deal. So worst case scenario, if for whatever reason it didn't sell or something happened, there's only $1,000 in the deal, and that's pretty low risk as opposed to putting $190,000 out there to make the 36. Still not the worst thing, not the worst deal ever at all by any means, but doing it with $1,000 in the deal makes it way, way more attractive. And so 0 to hero made 4.7x on the money on a deal that most people would have passed on. And after this second property, both of these super light rehabs, both of them just getting done in a matter of weeks, like 2 to 3 months, each one from purchase to sale, super quick. And you're looking at a bankroll of just about $100,000 almost after these two simple deals. So that was number 2. All right, let's get on to number 3. So the third one I call the usual because this is a little bit more of a typical kind of base hit deal that you're going to see. So this is about a little over maybe $250,000 total cost to sell for $350. Profit was around $50K. And actually had to do, this is like the biggest rehab up to this point. So this came from actually a mailer, which the previous two were just texting the sellers. On this one, I did do mailing. So all of them though are coming from these like pre-foreclosure, tax default, these type of lists, which are really good. And I showed in the previous video how to pull those. So you should try it and do that. And if you're going to do mailers, I'm going to give you some tips on how to do the mail right now. This one was in foreclosure, and it was also in probate, and it had some damage related to slight flooding. So, the property is flooded, the previous owners passed away and they stopped paying the mortgage. So obviously the owners are probably going to end up selling to an investor. And I ended up being able to get in front of him at the right time to get this deal. So I aggregate these lists, like I mentioned, probate, tax default, foreclosure, etc. And if they appear on more than one of those lists, meaning it's in foreclosure and the probate, so they're deceased, or it's in probate and tax default, they're deceased and not paying the taxes on a paid off property. These are kind of like the highest intent possible sellers, and they're very small lists. So in those cases, it makes sense to send mailers sometimes. Some people will preach, like you'll hear on podcasts and real estate, stuff on the internet, to like send mailers to absentee owners and whatever, tired landlords. I don't like to do those bulk mailings because you're going to be spending thousands of dollars on each one and getting like 0.5% to 2% maybe response rate. And it just doesn't really make as much sense to me. I like to do very small targeted mailings, kind of like this. And, these can really, these make a lot more sense to me. So I'll touch a little bit more about that. But what happened here is, the guy called in from this postcard. It was actually the attorney on the case that called in, but he was also related to the seller. So there was a mortgage of approximately $190. They wanted some cash on top of that. And it was very easy to comp this property because it was in a little small townhome subdivision. And I saw there was a comp right there for $325,000 in that same development. So I used that as the after repair value, but I knew I'd have nicer finishes and probably get a bit more than that. So when he called in, scheduled a time to go out and meet with them and see the property. We went back and forth a little bit. The mortgage payoff ended up being slightly lower than they thought, and we were able to agree on $205,000. And then after a full cosmetic rehab, was able to get a nice profit on this one. So like I was talking about the mailers, you're going to want to do smaller lists. And then for your mailing, all you really need to know is ballpointmarketing.com. They have a lot of cool postcards, handwritten stuff, letters. They do nice designs and very specifically made for real estate investors, and helps you stand out because they're not like these basic yellow letters or whatever that you see. So I recommend using that. And then if you do want kind of more basic bulk stuff, reiprintmail.com is good. And if you have really good, a lead that you're really, really trying to pursue and you're willing to spend some money, you think there's a big profit there, I actually send FedExes personally a lot, which are like $10 a piece, but that's like the highest likelihood of actually reaching someone and having them open it. If you get a FedEx, you're going to open it. If you get a yellow postcard, it's probably going to end up in the trash. So FedEx, you could do signature required, whatever, and that's how you know for sure you're going to be able to reach the person. So that's my 2 cents on mailers there, and that's how this deal originated. So they got this exact mailer. And they called in. I use this answering service. I'll just show you guys real quick for those that are busy or can't answer the phone all the time. I use this personally. So basically you just give them a script and they answer the phone for you and ask a bunch of questions, and it sounds really professional. I think it's $400 a month. It doesn't say here, but it is $400 per month. So they called in, my answering service answered, and it says they called because they received a card. They gave the property address. They said they want 210. So immediately called and scheduled a time to meet with that guy, walked through it, and agreed on 205. Similarly to the first deal, sent this to a private lender, and I actually on this property got basically 100% financing, got the whole purchase funded, and then got the a good chunk of the rehab funded as well. So when you're putting in the work to find these private lenders in your market and you have a good deal, you could very well get funding for 100% of the project. So like here, you could see this is a template basically you could use for reaching out to private lenders when you have a deal. So you could see the first deal and that one are very similar in terms of the structure of the email. So we got this condo, planning to sell it. This is the plan. This is how long it's going to take. Here are some comps, and this is what I'm looking for funding. So that's exactly the same structure used here, and was able to secure funding for, we're buying for 205 and got a loan for 249. So that's to cover all the fees at closing and get substantial rehab funds to get the project rolling. So here was a little higher loan fee, 3% plus 12% interest, $24.90 per month. So that's the terms of the loan. Use the standard purchase agreement here as usual, state board approved contract, just like how in the video linked in earlier, I showed how to get these. Just ask ChatGPT for your state approved realtor board contracts. So especially since it was an attorney, it was, I think, important that we sent this. If you sent them a wholesale contract, that you find on the internet, that probably would have got shot down by the seller and would have missed the deal. So use the state approved stuff. So got this signed, send the signed agreement to title and get the closing set up. And this is how the numbers broke down. So you could see it was 205 purchase, 249 loan, had those pretty significant loan fees, paid pretty much all the closing costs, it looks like here. And so at closing, after it was all said and done, $31,000 that I got at closing when I bought it. So bought the property and got paid $31K when I bought it to start the rehab. So with all the fees and closing costs, so when you're offering to pay all closing costs and you're doing hard money, you can see how quickly your total cost bumps up. So the purchase price was $205, but really my cost is $220 at purchase. So that's like a good 10% bump there almost, just from the fees and closing costs. So be mindful of that when you're offering it. It's like, it does actually cost money. But still got $31,000 back at closing to begin the rehab and have a balance of $249 on my loan, basically $250. So this one, like I mentioned, is the first one that's like actually a pretty significant rehab. It's not crazy by any means. This is relatively newer construction for Chicago. And, although it's pretty beat up, it's actually in pretty good shape overall. It did need windows, which was one of the most expensive parts of the project. And then like flooring on the ground floor, kitchen and bathrooms fully gutted out. See, these windows were busted. Bathroom was busted. Flooring upstairs was pretty much gone. And then this back patio was messed up. So the whole scope of the project was new windows, new flooring throughout, fully renovate both bathrooms, fully renovate the kitchen, do doors, trims, and hardware throughout, repair the porches and patio, garage door, and paint throughout. So for interior labor, this was actually the guy from our first condo that painted and fixed that one up. He came in and did the labor on this one for flooring, stairs, staining the floors, trims and doors, painting, cabinets, etc. Pretty much a lot of the interior labor. This was the fixing the porches and building a little back patio. And then this was the bathrooms. A lot more in materials here. So total rehab was about 35 grand. And this is what it looked like afterwards. So I will say we kind of snapped on these windows, but really just copied. There's another neighbor that had the same design. So copied that, went black with the color scheme here. Stained these floors, put in some recessed lighting. Kitchen these are Home Depot cabinets. So quick tip on the Home Depot cabinets. If you just take all your measurements and you go in the Home Depot design center, they'll put together the whole layout for you and the item numbers and exact dimensions and stuff like that and help you design on their software, these cabinets. And then you can get that PDF from them. You could send it to other cabinet shops and get quotes. And it's a really nice itemized list of all your cabinets. And they do that service for free for you. But ended up buying these at Home Depot. They actually have good prices on this, these shaker kind of MDF cabinets. Not the highest end stuff, but totally fine for up to $400,000 or $500,000 homes. New stainless steel appliances, cute little backsplash. This is the master bath, rehabbed upstairs. This is master bath as well, I think. A lot of these, this glass, the vanities, mirrors, fixtures, you get all that on Amazon, honestly. Ceiling fans, most of the stuff I buy nowadays is Amazon as far as fixtures and things like that. So kind of quick tip there. That's like some of the best stuff because it looks nicer than like your basic Home Depot stuff and it's actually cheaper. So yeah, new doors, etc. This is LVP from Floor and Decor for the flooring downstairs. On these patios, ended up just painting these, sanding them and painting them really nice. Kind of copied what the neighbor had going on there, and then did a little back pavers and little patio situation here. The grass looks like kind of nasty, but I thought that looked pretty good. See fixtures out here, but a lot of it is kind of copying, what the neighbor had here. I copied the back patio from the 325 comp because they had a little situation like this. Copied these windows from the neighbor. So really, I'm not like a design extraordinaire. I'm just copying what's selling and what I think looks decent. So after got all that done, it's a little bit over 35K in rehab, and then got it listed up for 350. So the highest sale in this small townhome development was 325 before, but it wasn't as nicely rehabbed. And there's houses selling for like 500K plus in this specific neighborhood. So put it up a little higher than the highest comp at 350, and got an offer actually over asking within the first week. So the buyer took a little bit longer to close here, but got it closed in about 35 days for 355.5. I'll kind of put that as a note in here, is like whenever you get a contract to, resell your property, don't always think the exact contract date is just going to close on that date. Most times it actually gets moved. There might be delays. They might have, something pop up on their credit or whatever, issues with their loan is pretty common. And, getting a week or two extension sometimes, or having to grant a week or two extension sometimes is necessary. So don't be surprised if that happens, but usually they do end up closing. So in this case, 355.5. We had a cost here, $5,000 unrelated to the realtor for something else. So got 59.9 back at closing, but really it was 64.9 because of this 5. But yeah, this was the mortgage payoff, all the closing costs, etc. So in total here, collected this 64 at the sale, collected 31 up front. So total collected was 96. And then spent between the rehab and the interest payments about 47,450. So total profit about 48.5. And this is kind of a more typical deal that you're going to see. On the first two, we had almost no rehab and pretty decent profits. But this is a little bit more common in most markets in the country. Like you're going to have to do a little bit of work to the property. And this is a good cosmetic rehab. Doors, floors, trims, bathrooms, kitchen. That's basically it. And get it back up as quick as possible. This one took way longer than it should have just because I had a lot of other stuff going on. But, this is a pretty good level of rehab to shoot for your first couple deals. So the problem here was property was inherited, needed significant repairs, and was in foreclosure. So triple whammy there. Strategy was that it's a strong market. It wasn't a huge rehab. So get in, do a quick rehab, and get it sold, knowing that it's a relatively newer house. Didn't need too much work. And we're in there at a pretty good margin with like at least 325 after repair value, 205 purchase. Pretty healthy kind of base hit. So that's why I call that the usual. And you can pretty repeatedly find these deals in basically any market. After this third property, we are sitting at $141,101.35 in the account. If you remember, you started with just about $10,000 3 deals ago. So sitting pretty now and getting ready for number 4. All right, so we've got a good amount of cash right now, and that segues us into deal number 4 pretty perfectly because number 4 I call the cash advantage. Okay, so purchase price here was $100,000 and $99,000 to get in. Sale price was $160,000, but we did absolutely zero rehab and sold this in about 2 weeks in and out, and we're able to do that because our bankroll was looking healthy now, and we actually bought this property cash and just flipped it quickly. As is, no work. Okay, so this is what the house looked like. I'm going to take you guys through it play by play. So this one actually didn't come from any type of specific list. It came from a wholesaler. It was a cash offer. So the property was significantly distressed and it did have chronically delinquent taxes. The owner was actually just days away from losing it to taxes. We were previously in contact with this owner through a tax list, but he was unreasonable on pricing, and then it came back around through a wholesaler. So, we tried to reach him before, tried to make a deal, didn't get it directly, but it still made its way back. So the wholesaler had it for an insanely good price, but they needed to close in a matter of days. And we knew they're going to be hard pressed to find someone to buy it because it was literally just a few days away. And so it was just beautiful timing that, the bank rolls up, you're sitting on a good amount of cash now, and then something like this comes around and you could strike and, lock in a really healthy profit with no work. So we were able to be aggressive here and lock in a nice profit. So this was pretty much a teardown. There's kind of some decision making here around whether you invest $300,000 to $500,000 and at least a year to do this project, or do you take the quick profit as is? And so floated it to a few investors, got an offer at 160 as is, and just ultimately decided to take the quick profit and keep it moving. But I'll show you guys what the buyer did with it and how much they were able to make, and you can kind of make the decision on whether that was the right move or not. But yeah, you could see here initially they wanted 192.5. They had an offer at 170 at one point, and the seller just wanted too much. Purchased it for 100 after it came through from the wholesaler. Got it set up super quick. It was closed in a matter of a couple of days, just because they were gonna, like I said, lose this property. So 100,000. See, without the lender fees and closing costs and all that. There's a lot less that gets added on, and so only had to wire $99,148 to complete the purchase. Like I said, this thing was absolutely destroyed. Structural issues. This kind of looks like, if you've seen Fight Club, looks like Tyler Durden's house. You could see how the floors were sloping and the house was all crooked. It's honestly was pretty horrible shape. I was almost certain that it would be a teardown, in which case it's 500,000 plus to build new, or at least be fully reinforced and gut rehab for a minimum of 350K. So here I just looked up other buyers that were buying stuff in the area, developers that were doing projects in the area, and that's simply pull up comps and just look at you could either put in filters for new construction here, do sold within the last 6 months, do year built of 2025 and up, and hit this, and then look up the owner and call them, or look up the listing broker and call them, say, hey, I have a project nearby, curious if you'd be interested in it. So literally it's that simple. That's how you find buyers. You can also just search, instead of doing a year built to find new construction, you could just do the keywords on Redfin and search, renovated, and you'll find stuff that's rehabbed. You go high to low. I'm doing a wide map here, so there'll be some expensive stuff, but you could do, renovated, and you'll see all types of rehab properties. And same deal here. Just hit up the, the seller or the seller's broker. If you had a property nearby to this one, call them, say, hey, I see you did 2109 Montrose. I have 2103 Montrose. Would you be interested in buying it? So that's how you find buyers for this kind of stuff to sell as is. But this guy didn't bite, but someone else did, and it wasn't 150, it was 160 offer. So they ended up doing a very nice rehab, and they got 675 when they did it. So they took the risk, they got the reward. I still made the 50 grand on the super quick flip, but they made more money for sure doing the full project, and they made it really nice. This is what it looked like after. So they did a nice rehab. But you can see here, I bought for 100 September 16th. I sold for 160 October 1st. So 2 weeks in and out, 50K plus profit. Can't really beat that. This was a really good developer because they did this whole thing and sold it by August, which is super quick. They did their rehab in 6 months or 7 months, a little bit over. That's incredible because it takes 2 months at least just to get your permits. And then they cranked out this whole rehab on this old busted house in like 5 months. So that's an expert developer. It would have taken me probably longer to do that. And you're really taking a lot more risk rebuilding a house like that, multiple 6-figure rehab budget, especially being your fourth deal. I would 100% go with the quick flip, take the profit in 2 weeks and keep it moving. Because this is a big project for someone just starting out. So I think that's the right move. But had you done the rehab and it cost you even 400,000, you still make 125. If it cost you 300,000, you make 225. So amazing deal nonetheless. And that came from a wholesaler. So had you, let's say this is your 14th deal instead of your fourth, and you buy this, do the project, on a wholesaler deal, make almost $250,000. Not bad at all. So why I decided to, another reason that I decided to just sell as is because 675, what they sold it for, was a new highest comp in this little pocket right here. This is a little bit worse, a little bit weirder streets here than it is up here. There's a lot of good sales up here. This is a good area, but here was a little bit less certain. So that was another reason to take the quick as is deal. So like I said, was that, there was no high comps like that there. Multiple 6-figure construction budget, risks increase exponentially. And like I said, this was really an expert developer. But yeah, how that played out on the resale was 160, a little bit of closing costs and stuff, and got 146 back. So put out 99, 148 to buy it. Collected 151, 473. I guess it was 150. Oh yeah, right here, due to seller, 151, 473. Zero other costs, literally did nothing to the property. So total profit, 52,324. So keys here was the seller was optimistic, held out too long for the right price. We missed it originally, but they ended up having to sell it for way less. So, had we followed up here, could have got probably even better pricing if we just worked direct with the seller, but still glad it came back around from the wholesaler. Strategy was quick flip in and out, avoid the construction risk, and secure the profit in 2 weeks. And theme is kind of 1 in the hand versus 2 in the bush. Sometimes it makes more sense to take the chips off the table and keep it moving. And now we're sitting on just under 200,000 in this last deal. 140 to 190, 2 weeks in and out. Put the cash out. Had the cash available, put it out, got it right back, and now we're sitting on about 200K. All right, let's go on to number 5. So this one, okay, fun. This one is called the minefield because this one shows you how things don't always go as expected, and sometimes everything goes not as expected. So I call it the minefield because so much stuff went wrong on this property. So the original purchase was only $47,000. Cash to get in was 0. Got 100% financing on the purchase. Rehab was about $11,900. Sale price was $139,000. So locked in a $49,000 profit at the end of the day. But this was not just a simple, easy base hit like one of the previous deals. This ended up going wrong a bunch of different ways throughout the process. So this came in as a cold call from the tax delinquent list again. But this was one of the most complicated deals for many reasons. So initially got in touch with the seller through a cold call. She was close to losing it for back taxes, which was about $33,000, but that was only the beginning of the problems. She'd already moved out and we agreed to a price of $40K. She was going to mail the keys. We were kind of buying it sight unseen for the most part. So after going under contract with her, we found out that there was an HOA lien for about an additional $30,000, and the HOA had already taken possession of the unit and moved a tenant into the unit. So obviously our $40,000 price wasn't going to cover it because now with the taxes and the HOA lien, there was $63,000 of liens. So before we even bought it, we're already on life support. Over a period of a few months, we're able to negotiate the HOA to agree to take $3,000. Because they were going to lose the property anyways. If the tax buyer foreclosed, that HOA lien would have got wiped out. So knowing that, we could approach the HOA and say, hey, do you guys want a tax buyer to take this and you get no money and then the future of the property is uncertain? Or would you rather negotiate your lien, let let me buy it. I'll fix it up and get a nice family to move in there after it's fixed. So they agreed to take $3,000 and were able to get the deal done at the original $40,000 purchase price. So that's great. They agree. Initially, we're told that the HOA, the tenant that they placed, which was paying $1,095 per month, would be allowed to stay. So the plan was just to buy it for that 40 and sell it to someone else that wants to keep it as a rental without doing any work. But that, after we closed, turned out not to be the case. They changed their mind and said now they want the tenant to be removed, and the tenant was not wanting to move, so we actually had to start an eviction. So that was the second big issue that came up, as that delays the whole process. Eventually we got the tenant out and did a cosmetic rehab on the property. During this time, the tax buyer that got paid out decided to file a lawsuit trying to claim that the redemption was improper, just on a technicality, because they wanted the property. And they decided to fight. And, if this lawsuit was ongoing, I wouldn't be able to sell the house while that's going on. So we needed to hire a lawyer, and eventually won that suit. The tax buyer agreed not to pursue it and that they would release their claim, and finally was able to get the property listed and get it sold for $135,000. So this was a lot of real and potential litigation for $40,000. That's 2 lawsuits plus negotiating a HOA lien. But, so that's a lot of crap to deal with on a $40,000 purchase, but it ended up being worth the headaches. And the moral of the story here is that obstacles will come up, sometimes all at once, but you just need to be proactive and methodical and knock them down one by one as they arise and see it through. And that's what happened here. And we're able to lock in a nice profit. So this originally was the cold call to the owner on that tax delinquent list. She said, give a few days to think about it. She's interested. Someone could meet out there or mail the keys. So the HOA didn't take it seriously up until the deadline was coming up for the tax redemption. But they did finally end up coming around. So here's the email from them where they agreed to take $2,865, basically $3,000 for that lien payoff, with their original balance being $29,300. So negotiating that lien first step was essential to get this done, because some people, had you seen the HOA lien pop up, you might have just gave up on the deal. But when that problem came up, we're methodical and try to find a solution, and we're able to reach a win-win solution with the HOA. So after that was done, got a loan to cover the purchase price just to keep our bankroll kind of freed up. So got a loan for 13% straight interest, no monthly payments, no points. And as you could see here, it was $48,000. And that's because we did need to end up increasing the price a little bit, even though the original contract price was $40,000. With all the debt, when it was said and done, we had to give the seller an additional credit of $4,300 and eat some other costs. So the total purchase after redeeming the taxes was $12,000 more. But yeah, the whole purchase ended up being $48,000. So had to go and pay the taxes because the deadline was already coming up before the HOA even agreed to the deal, before we were able to close. So we ended up having to pay that $33,000 up front to redeem the taxes and save the property, and then got that back at closing, then gave the seller an extra credit. And so 33 plus 4 plus the 12, we're at about 47,901. And so purchase was done, 48 out, got the loan for the whole purchase. And like I said, the original plan was just to sell this as is. So sent this to some realtors, just the same as you would do, like I just showed in the previous deal, how you'd find buyers for, how you'd find developer buyers for, like a property that you're selling as is. This is how you would find buyers for rentals, right? So you just look at properties that are listed for rent in that city, and then call whoever, has the listing. So if this guy is a landlord in the area, he might be interested in buying this occupied property. So simple as that. Basically click into these rentals, look up who the agent is that's listed the rental, and send them your property. So that's what we did here. Alan had some properties listed for rent in the area, hit him up and see if he wanted to buy it, and he did. So initially, everything was looking good. After being able to negotiate that HOA lien, we were able to agree to sell it as is, got an offer accepted, but not so fast. Let's see actually what the price was. I don't remember, but it was a healthy profit. It was asking 105. So got an offer around 105. It would have been a great quick double up, but the HOA decided to change their mind and the tenant was going to be unable to stay. And the HOA was firm on this and basically blew up that deal with that landlord buyer. And so, kind of knew we were going to be in for a longer deal now and had to get the tenant out. So this was a problem, but certainly not a deal killer. We could get a little bit more with it being vacant. So it wasn't the end of the world, but what came next was a little bit scary. This was the tax buyer petitioning to get our redemption basically canceled out. And that was granted because we didn't get served properly and didn't even see this. And so their motion to get that tax that tax redemption canceled was originally granted. And why that sucks is what would have happened if they saw that through is we would have just got reimbursed the $33,000 for the taxes, and all this other money that we paid to the seller and all these other fees and stuff we paid to the HOA, we wouldn't have got that back. Would have only got the $33,000 back. So that would have been a loss of 15 grand there. And so that was kind of really looked like not too good. So it was granted, and this meant we basically have to eat 15 grand and give the property back to the buyer. But I was able to find a lawyer that represents a lot of tax related cases here in Chicago, and consulted with him, and seemed like he was confident that that he's going to be able to get this undone. And knowing that, kind of paid the lawyer, hired him right away to go fight this, and decided to take the risk with continuing to remove the tenant and get the property fixed up. So this is what it looked like with the tenant living in there. It wasn't in that bad a condition at all. It was pretty good. So there was a decision to be made here. Do we fully rehab this thing, rip all the bathrooms out, rip the kitchen out, do all new flooring, do everything brand new? Or do we just kind of freshen it up and sell it like this? So fully renovated, figured it's worth about $150. Just refreshed, it's worth about $130. So decided to go with just the refresh. And that's because it's not worth it, right? Like if you're gonna put in an extra 20 or 30 or 40,000 just to get an extra 20,000 on the resale, doesn't really make sense. And I carry that logic through, any sort of rehab. Because if I'm going to put in $10,000 into a new back patio, but that's only going to result in $10,000 of increased sale price, that's not really worth it. Even if I put in $8,000 to get maybe $10,000 extra, is that worth the extra timeline and the extra cost? To me, it's usually not. I'd rather put in $5 and get my, $130 than put in $30 and get $160, if that makes sense. There needs to be a big enough premium from the work that you're doing to make it worthwhile. So the minor refresh made way more sense here. All that I would need to do for that is carpet, paint, little kitchen cabinet handles, couple light fixtures, and appliances, and that's it. Otherwise, I would have had to rip everything out, take a month or two longer on the rehab, spend a bunch more money, deal with more contractors just to get the extra 20 grand. Not really worth it. So this is old. Ignore that. But as far as getting the contractors for this house, Facebook Marketplace is great. That's where the guy came from for the first property, and then used him for the third property because the first one was just minor paint and stuff like that. And he got tested out on that. And then we could do him on a bigger project because we know he's good. So that's kind of what I would follow for Facebook people. Got a great carpet guy that I still use to this day on everything off of Facebook. And then got this was a different painter that did all the other work in this house. So $4,400 labor plus $3,000 for appliances, a few $100 for paint. Total rehab was $7,700. So here you could see the new appliances, the new little cabinet handles. These are still the same old cabinets, same old flooring that was in the house already, as you could see in the kitchen. Didn't really change much. All that we did in here was a new light fixture, new carpet, I think new blinds, and that's pretty much it. Super light rehab. So right around the time that this got listed for sale, or actually just it was after we took the offer already. So this was already listed. We already took an offer, and that tax situation was still ongoing. But luckily, a few days after we took the offer, the tax situation was resolved. The tax buyer decided to release their claim, and were able to finally resolve that situation. Legal fees for that snafu were $4,200. So priced it to sell and got a contract pretty quickly. Listed at June 3rd. 2 weeks later, got the contract. The tax situation was dismissed right around that time. And then about 45 days later, closed at full list price. So $139,900. 53,000 is what our loan from the original 48 with all the interest throughout this time. There was no payments, which was good, but increased the payoff to 53. And so got 61,700 back at closing when it was sold. So zero cash out. Basically how that worked with the taxes, if you remember, I had to pay the taxes of 33,000, but when we actually closed on the purchase and got the loan for 48, I got that money back. But then, so yeah, no cost, no cash in the deal when we closed the purchase. Then got 61.7 when it sold. Between that rehab and the legal costs, spent 11,900. So the total profit at the end of the day is just under 50,000. So the keys here, the initial problem was just the tax foreclosure and the HOA thing. So thought it was all gravy after negotiating the HOA, but then there was that tenant issue, the first deal blowing up with selling it with the tenant, then the tax lawsuit. It ended up being kind of a bit of a storm. But so the strategy being an initial quick flip turned into an eviction, litigation, rehab, and flip. So solving problems is a part of real estate. It's important to be steadfast and stay focused and just knock down the problems as they arise. Starting with that first HOA issue that might have knocked some people off, figured that out. Next issue came up, figured that out. Next issue came up, figured that out. And that resulted in a healthy profit. And at the end of this deal, $243,000 in the bank. So staying locked in, even though it was only a $40,000 purchase, all these issues came up, knocked them down one by one, ended up with a $50,000 profit, and now sitting on $243,000. All right, let's go on to the next deal. So number 6, holy profits. All right, this is a game changer right here. And this really cranks up our bankroll. $355 purchase, zero work, zero rehab, or zero cash to get in, 100% finance, zero rehab, sold for $585. So $203,000 profit with no work. And this is called holy profits because it was actually a church. So this is an interesting one. I got this one by driving by it. This is originally how it came up on the radar. Cash offer. So got blessed with a beautiful profit here with no rehab. It was sourced by spotting it while driving around. Great area, a lot of development. You could obviously see the windows were broken out. The weeds were overgrown. It was clearly vacant. And so this is where knowing our way around the public records and how to find people really proved to be very lucrative. So scraped the records here and saw that the nonprofit that owned it had been dissolved. The entity was no longer operating. In addition to that, pulled the last annual updates and saw that most of the people that were on the nonprofit board were deceased. So this thing was clearly abandoned. So did a lot of tedious work and follow-up, trying to reach somebody, finding obituaries, finding their next of kin, repeatedly calling every phone number to try to reach someone. No luck with that, and ultimately only got lucky when we went and door knocked one of the daughters of the president of the nonprofit, and finally were able to reach the family. She communicated with everyone else and got a deal done. Initially, she brushed it off, but then got in touch with everyone and agreed to meet out there, and able to get some numbers to her and make a deal. So initially offered 300 and she was interested, but then she got a family realtor involved and they negotiated us up to 355. But we knew the value for 2 lots in that area, which this was on a double lot, was at least 500K. So was pretty comfortable with that price. And then to get this sold, simply just researched people that had redeveloped churches in the past and reached out to all of them. And one developer was really interested. We kind of stayed involved through the zoning change and community meetings and stuff, and they ultimately bought it for 585. So after spotting this originally, driving around, started digging through the records to see who might be in charge of this property. This was the LLC or the corporation that was the owner on here. They had a few different ones over time that were dissolved, but found this document that was the most recently recorded thing for most recent update as far as their corporations, and it had a list of names here. So that's where we kind of start hunting, from going from just the name of a company to clicking through the documents and finding some names. We found that this Tommy Jackson fellow was the main guy in charge, and these were all a bunch of people that were at one point involved as the board of directors of this nonprofit. So any one of these people could point us in the right direction to find an owner and be able to try to negotiate a deal. So it took a couple of months persistently calling through all these people and all their relatives, but eventually door knocked one and got the ear of the family and was able to meet them out there. So this was a daughter of the main pastor. It took us and walked through the property. This is my younger brother, Bert. That when I say we, that's we work in this stuff together. So he was able to hunt her down and get all this together. So shout out. But yeah, this is when we went and looked at it. Initially offered 300. Then this realtor got involved, got us up to 355, but no complaints. So ultimately, he sent over a contract. We agreed at 355. Got a loan. This was our lender from the very first deal. So as you could see, took great care of them and continued to work together. And because of that, got 100% financing on this. So buying it for 355, asked for a loan for 365, and they agreed. So that's how it works. When you do what you say you're going to do, initially you might have to do some work to meet some private lenders, but they'll continue to, feed your business and you feed theirs for forever. I still work with lenders from 10 years ago personally. So this was the contract the realtor wrote up, agreed at 355. This is how the closing played out. So 340 was the purchase price, plus there was a $15,000 commission in here, right here, or no, somewhere in here though for the realtor. So the purchase price was really 355. Got a loan for 365, and ended up getting $5,000 back at closing. You could see they had a $195,000 water bill, which is insane. This property was abandoned and there's just water leaking, running inside. They didn't pay attention to it, and they had to pay $195K of their price to the city for water, which is insane. But yeah, at the purchase, got $5,300 back because we're able to get $100,000 financing, being a repeat borrower, and just had such a good deal. And that's how you do it. You just have to communicate the story. Like I touched on earlier about these emails to your lenders. It's here's comps for vacant lots, half the size, 436, corner double lot, better area, 950, single lot, 415. So the lender could be comfortable giving you 100% financing when you could communicate that it's a good deal. So this is what it looked like before. Obviously it was vandalized. People had gotten in, it just wasn't taken care of. Kind of sad. It's definitely seen better days. In this case, we knew right from the start that we're not going to redevelop this, but the decision to be made was between selling it totally as is with the existing zoning or getting it upzoned to be able to build a bigger multifamily property and then selling it, which would result in a higher price. But this was in an area where it's challenging to get it upzoned. They're like against development, they're high on preservation and stuff like that. So I think the path we ended up taking was perfect. But what I did to try and sell it was just made a Google Doc and started researching people who have redeveloped churches, throughout Chicago. So this was literally open a Google Doc and think, how do I maximize the church deal? List and sell to potential owner occupant, sell to developer with zoning change, and then looked up a bunch of similar projects. And the very first guy was the one that ended up buying it. So this was a bunch of other people that I reached out to. But I had found this article. That first buyer was working on a project turning a church into apartments, literally on the same street. It's just about, 11 blocks away. So same area, working on the same project. So called him up, left a message with the secretary. He called me back and, he was interested. Sent him over some information. They started coordinating to get in. Look at the property, put their numbers together. They were interested right away, but they're concerned about getting the zoning change. Like I said, this is a tougher alderman in this area for that kind of stuff. So it took a couple months of back and forth, and we stayed involved, longer than we wanted to. They kind of got pricing for as is, but then we still stayed along up until they were very, very confident the zoning change would get approved, but still very happy about the outcome. Ultimately culminated in a community meeting, and but then we're able to get it done. I think this is a video from me at the community meeting thing. I was kind of low key in here. This is the developers, and this was like the aldermen and people from the community that ultimately would end up voting on the project. So the sentiment at that meeting was super positive overall, and the buyer decided to pull the trigger. Their plans ended up getting approved shortly after they bought it. So this is some articles about that. They're converting it to 8 apartments, and that ended up being the right decision. After being involved in the process, it became pretty evident that my alternative zoning idea would not have gotten approved. Tearing this down and getting it approved for like 16 apartments or something, it would have never went, because the people in the community were so passionate about this old historic building. They loved it, its character, et cetera, et cetera. So they were very happy about the, it being reused and it, made back into apartments, and while still maintaining the whole exterior. So this is how they're going to do it. Inside, like decks, patios, whatever. This is going to be the layout inside on the 2 levels. So really cool project. I'm going to definitely make more videos about that, actually going and checking it out as they're building it. Those guys are really cool. So yeah, ended up selling for $585, some costs and whatnot, pay off on the loan, and got $203 at closing. If you remember, got 100, or we'll touch that in a second, but yeah, $203,000 back at closing for this resale, no rehab. So how that played out, obviously knew we were in a great position to buy that at $355. A little bit of a dilemma with the zoning situation I talked about. If we were able to get it approved for apartments, it'd probably be worth almost $800,000, but ultimately that was the right choice. Not doing that and getting the $585 on a quicker sale. So it was $5,000 collected at purchase, $203,000 collected at resale, total collected $209, no costs. And the problem here was the pastor passed away and the church was permanently closed down and abandoned. Strategy was to really be creative and find the owners and negotiate a favorable price so we could flip to a developer. And what really paid off here was knowing how to navigate those public records, finding those corporate, updates or whatever about the board, and finding those names and, just hunting them down. And so this was huge. Obviously, the bankroll just jumped over 200,000. We're now sitting at almost $500,000, $452,000. You don't get these kind of deals every day where it's a 200,000 profit on just an as-is flip, but they're out there, and this is, total game changer. We just upped our bankroll another 200 grand, and we're sitting at almost $500,000, starting just a few deals ago at 10 grand. And this is real money. Like it's, this is a number on a presentation you're looking at, but this is real 400, this is real money that's that we got from these handful of deals. And anybody could do this. You just copy this exact protocol, and 5-6 deals in, we're sitting on almost $500,000. All right, on to the next one. So this one is called consistency. And although the last one was pretty sweet, and as much as you'd love to just flip stuff as is and make 200,000 per deal on every single one, that's not really realistic. What you're going to see a lot more of is your regular base hits and these type of consistent deals where you're buying it, you're doing a little bit of rehab and flipping it, making 30%, 40% profit is great. And that's the expectation I want to set. Usually you're going to be looking at 30% after doing a little bit of rehab, and nothing wrong with that. So this one was a $71,000 purchase, all cash again, because now we're sitting on a whole bunch of money. You can rely on your private lenders less, still keep those relationships. You can still use that private money when you need it, but you're sitting on quite a bit of cash now and can do a lot of these without any sort of loans. So 66 to get in on the purchase, 23,000 for rehab, sell it for 162.5, about a $50,000 profit. So this was a text blast to the tax sale list again, cash offer. So this one was scheduled to have taxes sold in an upcoming tax sale. So it wasn't the most urgent situation, but still want to reach out to those owners. Seller had purchased it a few years earlier for a good price, lived there, and they were planning to move out of state. So the property needed some work, but overall was not in bad shape at all. It did take a lot of follow-up on this, and that's pretty common, and that's kind of the expectation you should go in with. But ultimately, we're able to get the seller on the phone, discuss ballpark numbers based on photos, and then agree on a rough price range. And then when she finally agreed to meet at the property, we adjusted that slightly, settling on $71,000. Bought it cash, cosmetic rehab, got it back on the market quickly. And again, similar to the previous one where we were talking about over improving stuff on your rehabs, we just did strategic improvements here, not to over rehab it, maximize the return on the capital, and more importantly, the return on the time. And after a $24,000 rehab, got it back on the market and sold for 162.5. So they initially said we decided not to sell right now. They're considering selling. They're going to think about it, and a lot of follow-up calls. It was like 10 times I had to call them before they actually wanted to have a serious conversation. So ultimately did that though, proposed $75,000 based on pictures, standard contract. Oh yeah, but then went out and looked at it, agreed on $71,000. It was a standard state approved contract, just like all the previous ones. This is what the numbers looked like at the closing. So 71,000 purchase, got standard tax credits and stuff. So it was 66,000 cash out of pocket to buy it, and easy peasy, bought it cash, no lender emails, standard contract, 66.3 out the door, and now we own this beauty and can get to work. So this is what it looked like before. As you can see, it was kind of messy, but overall, cabinets aren't in bad shape. It's a relatively newer, again, for Chicago, this Park Forest suburb is relatively newer homes. We elected not to over rehab here. It was a mess, but was in good shape. So all that had to be done is cleaning out and exterior cleanup. Did some new recessed lighting and light fixtures, light switches and outlets to just kind of make it look fresh and new. New luxury vinyl plank flooring throughout, new carpet throughout, then doors, trims, hardware, and gut rehab the bathrooms. So actually use the GC on here. This was a labor only quote, and we pay for materials, which I always recommend doing just so you don't pay the contractor too much money, and don't let them try to make profit on the materials. So you could pick out nicer stuff and pay less for it and keep your risk lower by only just paying them for labor stuff as it gets done instead of giving them, half of a whole job with materials and everything up front and taking that risk. Do not do that. So total labor quote, $12,595. As you can see here, quite a bit in materials. And so total rehab was about $23,000. And here's what it looked like after. So got it all cleaned up on the outside. Just did new see, same cabinets, same countertops, and just did the little hardware on the cabinets here. New flooring throughout, some vinyl plank floors. These are the recessed lights. New switches and outlets. This is Decora white switches and outlets. Look nice and fresh. So fully rehabbed this bathroom. New vanity, Amazon fixtures, Amazon light fixtures, tile, 6-panel doors, Amazon door handles. Flooring throughout, Amazon light fixtures, new carpet in the bedrooms. This is the second bathroom, so same thing, kind of Amazon mirror, Amazon light fixtures, all that good stuff. And looks nice and fresh, cute little house. This was the same landscaping that was there, literally the same pots that were there. So that was pretty much the extent of the rehab. So that's your standard cosmetic rehab you're going to do anywhere around the country where you're doing, floors, doors, light fixtures, bathrooms, stuff like that. Pretty standard. So bought for $71, sold for $162.5. So hired a GC, got right on it, got this one rehabbed quickly. It was just a few weeks to get the rehab done, and then waited through the holidays to get it listed right after the new year. We're estimating 160 on the ARV, but we're a bit ambitious because it turned out nice. So listed at 164.9. Took 3 weeks on the market, but got an offer just a little under asking. This is a heavy first-time homebuyer area, Park Forest, and this buyer had a lot of issues with their financing, so it took 2 months for them to close. But we decided to grant the extensions and kind of hang in there and see it through with them, and they ended up closing, so that was great. So 162.5 at the end of the day, after all closing costs and everything, ended up with 139. So put out 66.3 to buy it. Got 139 back when we sold, and the total with rehab and everything was 89,556. So our 66, there's no payments here, sorry about that, but 66.3 plus the 23,200 ended up with a net profit of just about 50 grand again, 49.5. So on a $70,000 house, 90,000 total cost, $50,000 profit. Definitely a super healthy return. The problem here was the seller had some back tax pressure, but they weren't super motivated, but they were moving, so it was kind of more of a convenience for them to sell to an investor. Strategy here that really differentiated us and was able to get this deal done was the relentless follow-up. So really that's needed when you're working these off-market deals, and paid off in this case. So great profit for the amount invested. These kind of singles and doubles are what you need to shoot for. The church home runs will come in between, but really you should be focused on finding these exact type of deals, your standard cosmetic fixers where you could do, a nice light rehab, get it in and out quick, and lock in these 50K profits all day, and then the churches will come, in between where you can crack those $200,000, $300,000 profits on bigger projects. But rolling all these deals up, at this point you're sitting on finally just cracked $500,000 in real cash in the bankroll, $501,000. Now we're doing deals cash, and we're just continuing to stack it. So wonderful. This is where we're sitting. And yeah, main point here is these are the regular deals that you're going to be doing day in and day out. And pretty soon after you're at deal 6, deal 7, and you get one of these, and then maybe another one pops up, you could start doing 2 at a time or 3 at a time, because these don't, take that much work and that much bandwidth. When you put a general contractor on it like this, he's getting it turned in a month. You can start to do a couple of those at a time while you're hunting your bigger deals in between, and it's really starting to turn into a real business and some real money. So that is the details on that one. So the next deal here is 1 in the hand again versus 2 in the bush. So this is another one that was sold as is with no rehab, but this one actually might have made more sense to just fix up. So let's walk through it. 95,000 purchase price. Also did this cash. Sold for 165. healthy 73K profit, no work, in and out pretty quick. But was that the right decision? Let's see. So this was text blast to a tax foreclosure. Owner lived down the street. This was his parents' home. He kind of got behind on taxes, decided he needed to sell it. Similar to our very first deal, he was pretty reasonable on pricing right from the start. So scheduled an appointment to walk the property. It was outdated, but it was well maintained. He wanted like 100. We agreed on 95. So part of the decision-making process here was that the village that this is in, it's called Maywood, and they're pretty stringent with their city inspection requirements. The house was old, so I was a little bit nervous about that and decided to just go for the quick as-is sale. I knew I'd be leaving some money on the table, but if I could lock in a healthy $50,000 profit, I'm selling it. That's what ended up happening. Got an offer at 165 and decided to just take the quick profit, but let's see what happened with it and if that was really the right decision. So text out, hey, we're an investor. Do you want to call about your property? Immediately he said, yeah, let's get on a call 4:30. So mentioned he has 2 properties, asking price 100 to 120. Understands that the houses in this area can go for 200, but thinks his asking price is humble. Used to be a realtor, right? So just like the first deal, got a seller that understands that selling to an investor is an alternative to trying to go on the market and maximize their price. And they know that they're leaving money on the table, but the convenience of selling to an investor is important to them. And, we can meet them where they're at and make a reasonable deal that, allows both parties to get what they want. So, he was sensible about pricing. He understands he's selling at a discount, and we agree at his number, close or right basically at his number, 95,000, standard contract, and close at 95K. So after tax credits and stuff, we end up at being $88,800 into this property at the purchase. And like I said, here we end up selling for 165. Was that the right idea? Let's see. This is what the buyer did with it. So I don't have before pictures, but I'll walk you through it. This basement, he did new flooring, new trims, kind of finished out the basement pretty nice, new recessed lighting. This is mostly original, like same trims. He just stained the floors. This stuff is all old. He did rehab the bathrooms, but like it's not anything extraordinary. It's pretty basic finishes. He really didn't go too hard. You could even see he left the same ceiling fans that are original to the house. So the rehab wasn't that crazy, and I didn't rehab it. Took the quick sale, 70,000 plus profit in about 60 days. But I will say, because this guy sold this for $348 and it took him 9 months, you could have done this a lot faster. That I definitely left some money on the table on this one. The buyer ended up doing a mediocre rehab, and he was able to sell for $348 in 9 months. And this was a comparable rehab to what we did on 45th, and bought this thing for 95 grand. We paid 205 for the other one. Bought this for 95. So I think it would have been done quicker, would have locked in a $200,000 profit. But, I personally had a lot of other projects, didn't want to open a can of worms with the village of Maywood. So I thought the 70,000 in 2 months is good, nothing to complain about. And I agree with that. I mean, it was still definitely a great deal, quick in and out, no stress, no worries, no construction. But if this was the only project that you're doing, I think it is definitely more than sensible to just go ahead and do the whole rehab. I mean, you're sitting on a pretty huge bankroll at this point. You got over $500,000. Buy this thing for 95. Even if you have to end up doing way more rehab than you thought, and you have to spend 150 grand in it, whatever worst case scenario, you still end up at $100,000 profit. So, looking back at this, and if I was in a situation where I didn't have a bunch of other projects, I think having actually done this rehab, he would have secured over $100,000 more in extra profit, and that would have been worthwhile. So you can see here I quickly flipped from 95 to 165, and then this guy ended up selling it for $348. Realistically, this rehab wasn't more than probably $50,000, $60,000, so that would have been almost a $200,000 profit. So yeah, put it out, sold for 165, decided that take that quick profit and keep it moving. But never go broke making a profit. I'm not going to complain about that. But yeah, if it was a different situation, if this was you and this is the only property you're working on, could just see that rehab through and lock in that extra profit. But in this case, put 88 out, 161 back pretty quickly, $73,000 profit. So overall, can't complain about that, like I said. But problem here was seller's second home, hard to keep up with. He was getting behind on the bills and knew he wanted to sell. He was reasonable though right off the bat, so honest with the seller, give them what they're looking for, clean and transparent. Could have made a lot more here, weighed the risks based on my current situation, and locked in the quick profit. And bankroll is now at 575, pretty much. All right, so next one is another as-is flip. This one was destroyed though, so this one is the Hoarder. Cheap purchase, $37,000, cash to get in, $39,000. Just cleaned this property out, didn't do any actual rehab, and sold for $75,000. So this is the smallest profit deal out of the series, but not going to leave free money on the table basically here. So why not buy this thing and turn around, quick flip it, minimal rehab. We're sitting on a decent bankroll. You could take advantage of opportunities like this. So this came through as a cold call from violations kind of list. So cash offer here, pull the data for violations is just the same as I walk through doing it in for tax defaults. You can just ask ChatGPT and prompt it a couple different ways, and you could find something about where to find properties with violations in your city. This property was absolutely disgusting. It was kind of sad. An elderly guy was living there in absolutely god-awful conditions. Initially reached him because violations recorded against it related to the city having to tear down the garage because it was a hazard. So the city actually came in and tore down his garage while he's living in there because it was so messed up. Ultimately negotiated with his wife because he, as you'll see in these pictures, was not able to take care of himself and needed to move to somewhere where he could get help. This thing was a total teardown. The plan was just to clean out the garbage and put it on the market to sell to a developer or whoever wants to take this project on. This was not a development heavy area. This was never a property that I wanted to rehab. This was the plan kind of all along, just to flip it as is. So initially agreed to $30,000 with the guy's wife, but the liens that were on it due to the violations, plus they had a mortgage, it all came out to be much higher than expected. So we had to increase to $37,500 to get the deal done, and then sold it for $75,000. After all the costs, it was definitely the skinniest deal in the 10 flip series, but minimal work and very safe price. So kind of couldn't lose. It was pretty low risk, and at this point, the 37.5 purchase is like 5% of our bankroll, maybe a little bit more. So this is a pretty low risk deal overall. So he had a loan, kind of we're talking about this, mortgages 21, water bill, judgments, etc. Ended up being that there's $36,000 balance. If we wouldn't have increased the price, the city would have just torn the house down. They already tore down the garage. The house was next. I felt we could still make a profit on this, so decided to move ahead. Had some preliminary conversations with the city just to make sure they're not going to knock it down while we're doing what we're doing with it. So this was like the only risk, and just wanted to mitigate that. So seeing with the city what they want from us, what they want to see, so they avoid tearing it down. And they were able to release that case after we secured the property and stuff. But agreed on $30,000. Had to do an additional credit to the seller for $7,500, and total ended up being 39. That's not right. 37,512. So that was the total purchase. This is what this thing looked like before, and yes, there was someone living in this house. So obviously, just absolutely horrible conditions. Ceilings falling in, like the property was stank like crazy. Absolute teardown, horrible house. So as you could see, it was destroyed beyond belief. Paid $3,500 just to get it cleaned out and make it more presentable and get the city off our back. So this is what it looked like after it was cleaned out. It still looks like a haunted house, but at least you can walk through it without stepping in something. So that's what it looked like after it was cleaned out. Originally, I did think it was worth a little bit more, listed at $99.9, but had to drop the price a bit and ultimately accepted an offer at 75 because it was just so destroyed. So got it at 37.5 total, cleaned out, listed at 99, but yeah, ended up going 75. So after commissions, after closing costs, after attorneys, everything like that, ended up only getting 64,000 back. So even though that's pretty decent margin percentage wise, pretty good return, 39,000 out to get 65 back. It was only really a $21,000 net profit at the end of the day, but can't complain. Super easy project, not much risk, not much work. So the problem was that it was in imminent danger of being torn down due to horrible conditions. So strategy was just to clean it out, make sure there's no real urgent issues with the city, and sell it to someone who has the stomach for fixing that. That was never going to be me. And the kind of theme here is that any property can be profitable if you buy it at the right price, no matter how destroyed it is. Mitigate your risks, make sure that you understand the values, and discount accordingly if it's really an outlier in terms of how messed up it is. But yeah, no matter how destroyed, any property can be profitable at the right price. And after this deal, we're at 600,000 just about in the bankroll. So this is almost the last one, guys. If you've watched along to this point, definitely appreciate it. This shows that you're super interested in this stuff, and I hope you're getting a lot so far. So let's go on to the 10th and final deal that pushes us well over $600,000 and that we end this 10 flip series with. So get into that now. All right, last one of the series, and this is a doozy. So this was actually the biggest rehab, $90,000 full rehab in this one. And the theme on this one is called Action Equals Reward. So this was actually an MLS listed property. It was on the open market. So, this kind of proves you can get deals on the MLS, but you really need to act fast to make those happen. So this was the house after it was done. And how it came through was listed on the MLS, and I had a nice Redfin alert set up for it. So how you make those is just put in your target area. I recommend that you set up Redfin alerts for a bunch of different things, like price drops, like new listings, etc. And how you do that is just go into the filters. You might put house, and you might just check fixer upper. That kind of catches a lot of them. Save that and see the new listings. Click save search, be notified instantly or daily, whatever. And you could do a bunch of different ones. This one was for price drops. So that's somewhere in here. There's price reduction, price reduced, and you could put how much of it or when it was reduced. So that's what the filter was for this one. Late one night, I got a notification that there was a $110,000 price reduction, which on a $200,000 property is a lot. So obviously that made me kind of perk up right away. This was around 10 p.m., so I called the broker instantly, even though it was late, and I found out the story was that they were listed at 2:30. They were under contract, but during escrow, a pipe busted and the property flooded. So the seller did an insurance claim, and they came out and gutted most of the house to get rid of all the water damage. So because of that, the agent dropped the price from 230 to 120. When I saw that, that's when it popped up. I immediately called. On the spot, I offered $100,000 cash, $20,000 earnest money deposit, and closing in 2 weeks, but that I need an answer right away. So since we're sitting on a healthy bankroll, you can make offers like that, and having the cash available gives you an edge and gives you the ability to confidently make these offers and know you could close on them, which allowed this deal to happen because she got back to me right away. And we had a deal. So I sent the contract. The seller signed it the next morning. And actually, a few hours later, she said that they got a substantially higher offer, but we were already locked in at that point. So had I not called that night and given that strong offer, I probably would not have gotten this deal. So that's kind of the theme of this, is take action when you see something good, especially on MLS. If you think about it, this is a small percentage of properties where something like this happens. There's a flood or something crazy happens, but that's the ones where the deals are at. Because if it's just a nice listing with nice pictures and they're putting it up for a week and letting 100 buyers through, it's going to be harder to get a good deal. So when you see something good, act fast, make a confident offer and lock it in. So did a full gut rehab here, nice finishes. The rehab took about 4 months and then sold for $293. So this is the actual email alert that I got. Price decreased to $120. So this is $230 to $120. This was the offer I sent over right away. Then deposited earnest money right away, $20,000. Standard realtor board contract again. You're gonna want to use this if you're working with a realtor or with an attorney, or in general. Those just are more credible. So always use that. 100K purchase, standard closing cost and whatnot, ended up at $98,000 total wire out to buy this thing. So I don't have many pictures. This is just kind of the back. You could see, none of this stuff is salvageable. This was the layout of the house. So I gutted everything out that wasn't already gutted. And then I turned these 2 closets into a shower for this half bath. So that got me to 4 bed, 2 bath with an open kitchen kind of right here. It was still a pretty small house, but it was nice finishes. So this was the first full gut of the series. We now have the experience. We have the contractors. Our guys have been proven on smaller deals, and we have the knowledge and confidence to do this. So new windows, new roof, new gutters, new electrical panel, lighting throughout, fixtures throughout, new furnace, new air conditioner, new water heater, new plumbing, fully renovate both bathrooms, new kitchen, all the cosmetics, paint inside and outside, literally hundreds of expenses. This is dozens of things that could go wrong, so many different people working on your house. This is why I don't recommend the huge rehabs on your first deal. There's a lot more risk here with the construction and doing all this. So that's why this is fitting to be like the 10th deal. Yes, you could do it a little bit earlier, but be ready. There's a lot more people you're dealing with, a lot more things that need to get done, and a lot more risk when doing such a big rehab. But after that was all done, this is the outside of the house. Just kind of painted it nice and did some new numbers, mailbox, light fixture, new cabinets. This is that Home Depot layout coming in clutch again. New appliances. Fully rehabbed the bathrooms. This is that shower that got added in where those closets were. Nice stand-up shower with there's a little rainfall shower head. This is the second shower. This is all floor and decor tile. Some nice wallpaper here. Amazon and Wayfair for the vanities. Amazon for all the other stuff. Carpet in the bedrooms. New ceiling fans. Luxury vinyl planks in the living room. So totally decked it out. Nicest house on the block for sure. After all that work, we're ready to go on the market. So you could see here, purchase at 100, listed a few months later at 299. Took a little while to sell actually, because it was a small house. Like it's 4 bed, 2 bath, but it was only 1,200 square feet or so. So it took a little bit and some price drops, but ended up ultimately going under contract for a little bit over asking price at this point. But yeah, love to see this. This is from Redfin. You got the crazy chart with the 100K purchase, 300K sale after that, just flat kind of line. So love to see that. So acquired for 100 because I acted fast. Completed full gut in 4 months, which is relatively quick. And then listed at 299. I was setting a new high comp for single story small house. So it took a little bit to sell. But after 2 months on the market, set a new high comp and sold for $293. So after realtor commissions, closing costs, property tax credits, etc., ended up netting just about $260 at the sale on this. So purchase out, funds out for purchase was $98,200. Spent $89,500 on the rehab. Got about $260 back at sale, so it was $72,250 collected. Total profit at the end of this project. So problem was property was flooded while it was under contract. Seller got insurance money and wanted to sell as is. Got this from the MLS. Deals are on the market. Set up your Redfin alerts. Strategy was going quick and aggressive with a reasonable price and great terms. So as soon as I saw it, called realtor and locked it in with really good terms. So that fast action resulted in an accepted offer and a great deal. And that final deal got us to our finishing bankroll, which was $668,995. So from $668,996 finishing bankroll, and all the way back here we started at, on the very first deal, $10,091.33 to start on this 10 flip journey. And really, if you look at our initial closing, we really only had to send in $3,900 of real money. You could probably do the rest of this on a credit card. So from $3,900 to the ending bankroll at $668,000. And now keep in mind, had you actually just flipped this property right here and made an extra $150,000, had you flipped the other property back here and made $200,000, you'd be at almost $1 million cash after these 10 deals. So, if you're still watching this video at this point, that tells me, not everyone's going to sit through a 2 hour plus long video about real estate if they're not seriously interested in getting started in real estate. And if you're interested in getting similar results to this, and you've sat through this whole thing, taken notes, learned from this, you probably do have some questions, but I have answers to those questions. I touched on a little bit on what the mentorship looks like. So if you're the type of person that watched through this whole video, you've been interested in real estate for a while, and you're really serious about making this happen, I do have a mentorship option available for kind of aspiring operators, people that want to multiply their capital with these same strategies that I showed in this video. So in my mentorship, I go through a lot more detail, and I actually have an option where I hold your hand through this entire process. You basically borrow my 12 years of experience. I look over your shoulder, and I'm a resource for you to make sure you don't blow up and make a big mistake. And you could run things by me. We literally partner on your first 3 deals. I provide funding for those first 3 deals and can continue to provide funding for you as you grow. And it's a true one-on-one experience. We literally partner up and do deals together in your market using these tried and true principles that I've developed over hundreds of deals over the last 12 years. So if that sounds interesting to you, fill out the link below. It's really only for qualified people. We're going to talk first and see if it is a fit. And if so, I'll let you know, and you can decide whether you want to do that with me or not. But I'm looking for a handful of partners in different states. And again, the goal for this is I'm not trying to sell an info product for $500. I actually do this business. This is my primary source of income. This is what I spend every day doing. And the main reason I'm doing this is to seed partnerships with different, just hardcore dialed operators in different markets that will ultimately, grow their business, and we could collaborate and continue to work together on deals, which will then thereby grow my business as well. So that's the whole goal here. If you watch this far, if you're interested in learning more about this, tap in with me at the link below. We'll jump on a call, talk about it, and go from there. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Give me a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and see you on the next one. And yeah, fill out that form below, and look forward to talking with you soon.